All right, so since we are using this, this Triumphs Labs account, you will be seeing this as a DevOps organizer. Okay, it will be common for all the meetings, so don't worry about this one. Okay, even though it says as DevOps, it doesn't mean we are in a DevOps session. Okay, all right, so basically we are here to learn Selenium. Okay, and Selenium is the most widely used automation tool. And when we say automation, we are specifically talking about the web automation. Okay, that's how popular this tool has become. Although there are so many types of automation, whenever someone talks about automation, in general, they are referring to web automation. And whenever they are talking about an automation tool, more or less they are talking about Selenium itself. That's how popular this Selenium is. Okay. Just to give an brief history, Selenium started around 2004. Let me increase the font. Okay. Selenium started around 2004. Why we would say like this is because the Selenium is an open source project. It's not like, someone developed this on behalf of a company and they started marketing it at a particular date. It is not so. Okay. Selenium was developed, inside a company called as ThoughtWorks, and they developed it for their internal usage. Okay. They wanted to test some web applications within their company, and they were seeing the challenges that were existing at that time around 2004. To overcome those challenges, they came up with this idea of developing a new tool which will be an open source tool. You don't have to pay license fees for it. You don't have to set up as per their guidelines. It would be flexible, it would be free to use. That was the main concept in developing this tool. And they first developed it, they started using internally, and then when they found out that this has a very good potential and this can basically ease out the existing challenges, existing automation tool challenges. Okay, so they basically launched it to the open world. Anybody on the globe, whoever wants to use it, they can use it. They made it public around this time period. Okay. Since then, it is more than 20 years now. This tool has been, it has got, different updates. Basically, when it started, we say Selenium 1, okay, in 2004. And today we are using Selenium 4. Okay, so in between there was Selenium 2, Selenium 3, and even within Selenium 2 and 3, there would have been many versions of it. But these were the major updates that Selenium has seen. Okay. So in this course, we are going to learn entirely about Selenium, and also there would be some other tools and technologies that would be required to do this web automation as a whole. Okay, so this course is not going to be about Selenium only. Okay, so we would be covering everything that would be required to do this piece, web automation, web browser automation. Okay, so let me also open the course contents. Okay, so when the title of this course although says Selenium WebDriver with Java, it includes many other small tools and technologies that are required to carry out this web automation. Okay. And in order to work with any automation tool, we have to know certain programming skill sets. Okay. We have to have certain programming knowledge because these tools are better handled through a programming language. There are some tools which don't require you to code. Everything is UI based. Okay. And Selenium also has a component within that which will basically enable us not to write any code, but still it will generate the script on its own. Okay. Let me go to the Selenium's official website. Selenium's official website is selenium.dev. Okay. All right. So this is the official website. Whatever you want to learn, whatever you want to know about Selenium, this is the source of truth for us. Okay. No matter you might be seeing many videos on YouTube, many, contents over different websites, but the source of truth is going to be this website. Okay. So in this website, they are putting up three components here: Selenium WebDriver, Selenium IDE, and Selenium Grid. So as I was telling, this component of Selenium is basically an UI based component. You need not write code for this. You just have to use an UI console which it produces and start recording your script. You just have to start the recorder and start performing the operations on a website. It would capture all the actions that you performed and it will convert it into a script or a program. Okay, that feature is there, but the challenge would be this feature cannot be used for every type of scenarios. This would be only possible, this will be, efficient to carry out small scenarios, like a very basic login scenario, logout scenario, navigating to different pages, very basic functionalities, it can help us. If you want to do a complete end-to-end automation of any web application, we have to use this component, Selenium WebDriver. Okay, so this component requires us to write the code. Okay, so let's say we have created our scripts either by this component, basic scenarios, or by this component, all types of complex scenarios. If you want to execute them, then this component will help us. Okay, the Selenium grid. So in this course, we are going to learn each of these components. Okay, it's not like, we will be learning only this or only this. We have to learn all of this because only then we can say we know Selenium. If we learn only one piece, which is more widely used, and leave out the other two components, it is still a learning, but we cannot say we know Selenium. Okay. So that is the, in this course content, whatever I showed you, all three components will account for only this much of our content, and probably even this much. The overall history and architecture of Selenium and how Selenium works. What follows this is what I was telling, the other supporting tools that would be required to carry out the web automation. Okay. Selenium will do its job, but we would require other features which would be provided by different tools. So we would be learning all these components or tools as well. But what we will start with is, we will start by learning a programming language. Okay. So why we have to learn this? Because this guy, Selenium WebDriver, we have to communicate with this guy. We have to tell the WebDriver, you go and click on a button on a website, on a browser, on a web application. You go and select a radio button. You go and type in a text box. We have to tell it, and we have to tell it in a language that it can understand. Okay. Luckily, it can understand multiple languages. Okay, if I come to the downloads section, so these are the different options that are there for us to communicate with the Selenium WebDriver. We can communicate with it C Sharp or Ruby or Java, JavaScript and Python. Okay, any of this programming language is good to start scripting for WebDriver. But why people always choose Java? Again, the history goes the same way. Okay. Java started around 1995. Okay. Actually, the development and the initial releases started around 1990. It was officially launched in 1995. Okay. Selenium was officially launched by a company in 1995. Since then, it is almost 30 plus years now. Java is a very popular and most widely used programming language. Okay. Again, in programming languages, we have different types of languages. Like we have procedural languages, we have object-oriented languages. This Java falls under the object-oriented category. Okay. So Java has its own advantages. We will actually see its entire history, why Java is so popular, why people often end up using Java, as compared to other languages. So we will learn all those things, but the most widely used language is Java. That is one point, one of the feature why we choose Java to work with Selenium. And the other feature would be in any project, we will not just do web automation, right? We would also do mobile automation. We would also do backend automation, which is API or microservices. Okay? All these are functional aspects, functional testing, whatever we call. Okay, there would be non-functional testing, that would happen, like performance testing, right? And there would be something called as security testing. There would be accessibility. There would be visual. There are many types of non-functional testing that would happen. So in any project that we are going to work, we are not just doing this web automation. We would be doing, a variety of automations. And let's say we start this web automation with a programming language like Java. The advantage would be we can actually finalize other tools for doing other types of automation which are based on Java. Okay. Let's say for web automation for Selenium, I choose C sharp instead of Java. Then there is no automation tool for mobile automation that can work with C sharp. There would be some provision, but they are not so popular. And let's say we want to do some automation for the API testing. Again, there are very good tools that work on base of Java. Okay, the advantage of learning Java for automation is we can actually extend our automation types, into different technologies by choosing the tools which work on Java. Let's say for web automation, we are using Selenium plus Java, mobile automation Appium plus Java, API Rest Assured plus Java, performance JMeter, which is built on Java, security, there is a tool called as Zap, which is again based on Java. Accessibility, we have different Java libraries for this. Visual, there is a tool called as AShot, which is a Java based tool. For accessibility, we have a tool called as Axe. Tool in the sense they are open source libraries. Using those libraries, we will write a program to do this accessibility testing. So if you learn Java, okay, you can actually learn automation tools that you can use to do all these types of automation. That may not be possible if you choose any other programming language. They will be tool specific. Okay. If you go with Ruby, maybe Ruby will work with Selenium. But when it comes to rest assured, it is not possible. You will have to do API testing using a different programming language and web automation using a different programming language. So often people will not go in this direction. They want to generalize the things. They want to keep it simple. Okay. So learning Java would be the strong foundation that we all can get, so that it's not just web automation, we can extend our automation to all these types of automation. Okay. So that is why we would be starting by learning this programming language Java, and then we will learn this tool. Okay. And Java is a very huge language. It has wide, you know, usage context. Can be used to develop backend technologies, like we can build APIs, we can build microservices, we can build the database interface, all that is possible. And we can also come up with web applications using Java, the front end. We can also develop mobile applications using Java. Okay. So it is like a huge ocean. What we will be learning inside Java is whatever we require to work with Selenium. Only that part we will be learning from Java. Okay. And that part is what we call as core Java. Okay. There is something called as applet programming in Java, application programming. Okay. So we are not going to learn each and every aspect of Java. So we will be learning this core Java so that we can get started or we can do everything for Selenium. Okay. So that component of Java is what we call as core Java. Okay. So basically in this section, we are going to learn largely about this object-oriented programming. So as I said earlier, programming languages are of different types. Java falls under the category object-oriented programming. So we will learn what is object-oriented programming, why it is popular, and how Java fits into that category. And once we know what it is, we have to learn what are the different, options or features of this one. So that is what we will be, largely learning. Okay. So this, whatever I have highlighted now, this will fall under the object-oriented concepts. Apart from this, we would also learn a couple of more things that are not part of object-oriented programming, but they are required for Selenium. Okay. So this is how we are going to structure our course. So we would start by learning Java, and then we would switch to Selenium. And once we are done with Selenium, we would switch to other supporting tools as well, so that our end goal is to carry out this entire web automation. And whatever it requires, we will be learning here. Okay. So even before we get started with Java, let's have a brief overview of this software testing and automation as a whole. Okay. This is just like an introduction. Okay. If you people have already started working in some company in some project, it means that you have already exposed to these terminologies. Okay. There might be some people who want to start with their jobs, start with their career. Okay. For them this would be really helpful. Okay. So in that context, let's start with this very basic things. Okay. And then we will basically try to connect with automation. Okay. So what is software testing? I mean, there are many, standard definitions for it, but this is how I perceive it. How I understand software testing is this. What we will do by testing a software, we make sure that application works as it is supposed to work. Okay, this is what we call as positive testing. And we also make sure that the application doesn't work as it is not supposed to do. This is what we call as negative testing. This positive plus negative is what we call as functional testing. We are basically testing the functionality of this application. Okay. And this accounts for 80% of the testing that anybody will do in any project. Okay. And this is where our Selenium will also come into picture. We would be using Selenium to do these types of testing only, which is functional testing. Okay. But testing doesn't stop here. We have to basically make sure our application is working with optimum user experience. Okay. So whenever this user experience comes into picture, we are talking about non-functional aspects. We are not testing the feature or functionality of an application, but we are basically testing how an user experience would be when he interacts with the application. How fast the application is responding, how clear the font is, the text font, how clear the buttons or icons are, is there any overlapping of the text or images. All these, this account for user experience. Okay, if he clicks on a button and it takes more than 5 8 seconds to respond, definitely he would be frustrated and he would look for other options. Okay, so all this user experience is what we call as non-functional testing. All this combined is what we call as software testing. Okay, so, I mean, 5 to 8 years before, there was not much emphasis on this part. Okay, because the overall software technologies were not so efficient. Okay, वो बस काम करना चाहिए हमको, एक एप्लीकेशन है, उसका एक फंक्शनैलिटी होगा, वो फंक्शनैलिटी काम करना चाहिए, वो 5 सेकंड में करेगा, 10 सेकंड में करेगा, इट इज स्टिल फाइन. That was the general perception at those times. But now the things have changed quite dramatically. Now it's not just it has to work quickly. That is the need of the hour. Okay. So obviously, to cater to this need, every company in every project, whenever they are going to release an application to the real-time environment, they will test on these aspects as well. And this is something wherein you may not be able to test it manually. You will have to do automation only for these types of testing. Okay. So what are the different types of functional testing we have? We have UI testing. We generally call it UI, but when we call it UI, we are referring to three things here: web UI, mobile UI, and desktop UI. Although this desktop UI is, it is, I would say it is going away. Okay. We don't see much of the desktop applications being used now. Very few are there, but largely the applications are web applications and mobile applications. Okay. And to do these, this UI, sorry, to do this UI automation, we have different tool options here. Of course, Selenium, that this is what we will be learning in this course, but it has its competitors. Like there is something called as Catalan Studio. These Cypress and Playwright as are new age tools. They are also gaining some traction. They are also becoming popular. Okay. So whenever you learn any of this tool, you should also be aware of its competitors. What else the people are using, what other tools are people using to do the same task. Whatever Selenium is doing, the same thing this playwright can also do. How it is different, the comparison study, everything we should be aware of. So for UI automation, we have these popular tools. There will be 20 or 30 other tools as well. Okay. And to do this desktop automation, we only have this tool, Appian. Okay, which we can also use to do this mobile automation. And for API automation, we can use all these tools: Rest Assured, Postman, Karate. Okay, and for microservices testing, this is there is a difference between testing an API and testing a microservice. Okay, and to do this microservice testing from the automation standpoint, this is the tool. Okay, and of course we also do some database testing, which we call as ETL testing. Okay, so this is another section of testing. Okay, this will again fall under the functional testing part here. Okay, and when it comes to non-functional testing, these are the most commonly you know uh, types of testing here, most commonly used. There are actually many more, but people will usually do on these things. Performance testing or load testing, we have these tools: JMeter, K6, Neoload, Locus. These are some of the popular tools that are you know people are using in the industries. Security vulnerabilities also we have to check. Okay. For this, we have a tool called as OWASP ZAP. I mean, whatever the tool we are talking here, they are all more or less open source. Okay. Although this Catalan Studio is a commercial tool, but largely the tools that I have listed here, they are open source. One such open source tool, this ZAP, we can use to do this security testing. Okay. Accessibility testing, as I said, we will be using some Java based libraries like Axe for accessibility, A short for visual testing. So if you look at this section closely, we are talking about a host of tools here, a collection or a bunch of tools. So anyone who is at the beginning of their automation career would be thinking there is so much to learn, but this is the reality. Okay. You cannot say that I will learn Selenium and I can continue using Selenium throughout my career. That is not possible. Okay. So whenever you are in this software testing field, you have to keep updating yourself. Okay. These tools, this Playwright and Cypress, they are giving a tough competition for Selenium. So what Selenium did, it improvised itself. Now, whatever the extra features or important additions that these tools have provided, Selenium has also started providing these tools, those features. So likewise, we also have to keep updating ourselves. Selenium learning would be the start of automation learning. Once we learn the Selenium, we should not stop at that point. We should expand our skill set to mobile automation, API automation, database, some insight we should have. We should also look into this non-functional aspects. We should continuously keep learning in this space. Okay. So, we are talking so much about automation. So what basically is automation testing? Okay. So it is the process of using software tools or scripts or programs to test a software application. So this is what we call as automation testing. If I sit in front of a web application and start using it or start testing it, it is called as manual testing. One person has to sit in front of the application and test it. Instead, one person sitting in front of the application, I will write a program which will basically replicate the actions or behaviors of a person. Okay. That person or that program will do whatever that one individual person can do in this application. It will load the application, it will log in into the application, it will fill out the forms, it will navigate to different pages. Everything that a normal person would do, this program will also do the same thing. And if we are able to achieve this part, we say that we are doing an automation testing. Okay. So by basically the main agenda would be to replicate the user actions or behaviors on an application. In order to do this, we require some tools. Okay. So where is this automation used? It is actually used everywhere. Okay. So we cannot single out a phase in testing wherein this is the phase of automation. It is not so. Automation is more or less used in entire software testing lifecycle itself. Okay. But largely we say automation's main job would be regression testing, smoke testing, and non-functional testing, which more or less actually covers the entire testing activities. Okay. So, this regression testing would be the main contender for automation because this is the piece of testing which manual testers would feel very bored or this would be a huge task and it would be a very simple and very repetitive task If you ask any person to do it, first time he will do it, second time, third time onwards, he will get bored. Okay, whenever a human being gets bored in any activity, that activity, he will not carry out that activity in an efficient manner. Okay, to address all these negative aspects, automation has to come into picture, at least for this regression testing. Okay, okay, let's say we automated only this regression part, but what about the smoke part? We also want some automation to be done as part of the smoke testing. Okay. And of course, non-functional testing like load testing or security, we have to rely on an automation tool. It is very difficult to test it manually. So what is performance testing? Let's say for a web application, if 500 users log in at the same time, how the application will respond to it? How to test it manually? I have to bring in 500 people, give 500 laptops to those people and ask them to log in at a particular time. I mean, exact second of a minute they have to click the login button. It's very difficult to do those scenarios manually. Okay. So this is where automation will definitely come into picture. Okay. And what are the advantages? Automation is fast, automation is reliable, it is scalable or enhanceable, and it is accurate. Whenever we look at any activity that a human being is doing, it is bound to have some discrepancies. It will not be so reliable, it would not be so scalable in the sense we have to increase the people count here when it comes to manual testing, and it may not be so accurate. If I do one task and the same task is done by some other person, the results would definitely vary. Okay, so all these negative aspects can be overcome through automation. If you write a script to perform a scenario, and if you run it 100 times, the result would be same. Okay, if the same thing is done by any person, if he does the same scenario 100 times, at least 75% of those times the result will be different. Okay, so these are the main advantages of this automation. Okay. And let's say we understood all these things, we know the benefits of automation, we know where all we can use in our testing activities this automation. Okay, then what all we have to consider before we get started with automation. Okay, so these are some of the background points that we have to be aware of. What platform or on what operating system our application is running. That is one parameter that we have to consider. And we have to consider what all, let's say we are finalizing a tool, even for that decision, we have to take into considering these points. Whether the tool has extensive community support. Okay, if I run into any issue while using an automation tool, I have to get the help. I have to get it from some other person who is using this tool, right? That is what we call as user community. So the larger the community is, the better we are. There will be more or less, there will be a possibility. If I run into any issue, I will get some help. Okay. And for any automation tool, there should not be any open-ended challenges. Like in this automation tool, this is not possible. Except this activity, you can do all other activity if you choose this tool. Such open-ended things should not be there. Okay. And Selenium, since it is there in the market for more than 20 years, they have covered almost everything. We cannot say, there is something related to web testing that Selenium cannot do. Okay. So that would be a major parameter whenever we start with automation. Okay. And it doesn't mean like, we can do anything and everything in a web application. Automation will have its limitations. There would be certain scenarios which you cannot automate, not just with Selenium, with any other tool as well. Say, for example, automating a CAPTCHA. Okay. CAPTCHA is basically introduced in an application to avoid automation. So obviously automation will not be able to handle it. This also means Selenium will also not be able to handle this. And there would be some other aspects as well. Let's say a web application is generating a good number of PDF reports. Okay. So we have to test those reports and report content as well. And this is not the job of the Selenium. Okay. Although this is part of the web application, these PDF reports are something which we will download on our system and open it using a different software. So Selenium tool is basically built to interact with the web browser. If we are deviating away from this browser, then Selenium will not be able to do it. Okay. Or any other tool for that matter. We have to rely on other mechanisms to do it. Okay. So we should be aware of all such, do's and, such things like these things we can do, these things we cannot do whenever we opt for any automation tool. Okay. And no, of course, we have to also consider the application under test. The application that we are going to test, what that application supports, what it doesn't support. Let's say that particular application has some features that are basically restricting automation usage. Like say for example, there is a captcha, and if there is a captcha, we cannot do automation. So this is just one example. There could be some other example as well, which will basically restrict us from doing automation. So all these things we have to consider whenever we are starting with automation. Okay. And let's say we analyzed all these things and we finalized Selenium plus Java is what we are going to do with. Then we have to always start by doing a POC. Okay. We should automate some sample flows. They should not be a very simple flow like login, logout. It should contain an end-to-end scenario so that we gain confidence that, okay, using this tool, I can do the entire automation. And the same thing we can basically show to the higher management, get their approval, and start with our automation stuffs. Okay. So this is how, if we are involved at the very initial stage of automation, this is how the decision would be made. Okay. All right. So far we are all, positive about automation. Automation will do this, automation will do that. It has so many advantages and all. Now let us take a look at some limitations of automation as well. Okay. Obviously, automation has certain limitations. It will not be, able to do certain activities. What are those? Not everything can be automated. Okay. So as I said, there will be certain scenarios which we have to test manually. We cannot write a automated script to do that. Okay. So usually this would be the scenario. Around 80% of the test cases we can automate. Still, there would be 20% of the test cases which have to be tested with manual testing. And this automation requires some coding knowledge or technical expertise. Something you need to invest. Okay. This is something that a company also has to invest. They have to train their employees, or they have to hire an employee which, who are experts on these things. So there is something, some extra thing required to, for this automation. Okay. And it involves regular maintenance work. So if I write a program or an automation script today, it will not work as it is for, let's say, 6 months. Every other week we would have to do some changes to that script. So that is what we call as maintenance. So this will always be there whenever we do some automation. Okay. And this is of course a limitation here. Not suitable for new features getting developed. So of course the new features would be very unstable. And if I write a script for that, I will have to keep updating that script very oftenly. Okay. So people try to avoid this thing. So how to test these things? Again, manual testing. So for new features, automation is not a good candidate. So that means it is also a negative aspect of automation. Okay. And of course, we will not use automation to test in the production environment. Production is nothing but where the application will be used by real users. Okay. And if I do some automation and by mistake it corrupts something, it will actually impact the business altogether. So automation will not be used in production testing. It will not be used for new features testing. So these are the two things where manual testing will always be there. Okay. No matter how good automation is or how good the automation tool is, these are some of the areas where manual testing will always be there. Okay. So these are the limitations. So the overall agenda of doing automation would be these two lines. Okay. It is intended to reduce the burden of manual testing. Let's say, apart from these two things, new feature testing and production testing, all other testing is done by automation. That is what we call as regression. If new feature testing is called as a new feature testing, what would be the name that we, coin it for the other features testing? That is regression testing. Okay. So we will tackle the entire regression through automation so that the manual testers will be fresh and they will be, having less work and they can actually test the new features very actively. Okay. So basically, automation will help the manual testers to do thorough regression plus new feature testing. Regression, they will run our automation scripts. Okay. And it will run in the background, it will generate the report. Okay. And they will basically keep themselves busy in testing the new features. So overall testing quality will be really good. Okay. So this is where this automation will help the overall testing activities. Okay. So this is some brief background about software testing and automation as a whole. Okay. So this is a very generalized, concepts or topics that we saw today. And going forward, we will basically, focus on one tool, one such automation tool, which is Selenium. Okay. Of course, I already shown the three components of Selenium: Selenium IDE, WebDriver, and Grid. Okay. And this architecture basically tells us how Selenium works. But at this point of time, it will be difficult for you guys to understand what is this. Okay. But largely what we can understand is Selenium comes in two parts. Okay. One we can call as a client, one we can call as a server. Okay. What is a client? The program that we write is called a Selenium client. It can be Java program, it can be Python program, it can be Ruby program, it can be C sharp or whatever. Whatever the program or the automation script we write, that is what we call as the Selenium client. Okay. And the remaining part of Selenium tool is what we call as server. This is what will actually understand this program and replicate it as an action on a browser. Okay, this is the basically Selenium is a client server architecture. Client is our program and the other part of the tool is the server. Server will basically understand the commands that we are giving through this code, the client. It will understand it, it will decode it, and it will replicate it as an action on the browser. How will it replicate it, on a browser? Okay, let's say I wrote a Java code to click on a button. Okay, Selenium server will understand it. Okay, what I have to do is I have to go to this application and click on this button. So how will Selenium do this? So for doing this, Selenium uses something called as drivers. Okay, Why these are called as drivers? Because these will drive the automation. So the command to click a button I have written in Java, Selenium understood it and it transferred this command to this driver. Now this driver will basically go to a browser. Let's say it goes to Chrome browser. Okay. Driver will connect with this Chrome browser, and within the Chrome browser, there will be some automation support. Who is providing this? Whoever is developing the Chrome browser, they are already providing this automation support. This driver will use this automation support, which is already there in the Chrome browser, and using that automation support, it will click on the button. So this is how Selenium tool works. Okay. So we will write Java code, which will be our command. Okay. Which will come to Selenium server. Selenium server will understand this command and it will transfer it to this driver. Okay. And this drivers will actually do the job for us by the automation support that is already present in the Chrome browser. Okay. Similar thing will happen for a Firefox browser, for a Safari browser, all those things. Okay. Every browser comes with some inbuilt automation support. Selenium's main agenda is to utilize that support to carry out its activities. Okay. So, I mean, this architecture to understand, it might take some time for you guys, but this is how this Selenium tool works. And this part we call as Selenium client. Okay. And every other part is what we call as Selenium server. This Selenium works on a client server architecture. Okay. Of course, there is something called as JSON wire protocol. There is W3C protocol. We will, learn about these or understand these in much detail when we actually start the Selenium sessions after completing all our Java. Okay. So, I mean, why I have put this at this point is in the latest version of Selenium, Selenium 4 version, they have changed this protocol from JSON wire protocol to W3C protocol. This is the major update that they have provided. And in order to follow this W3C protocol, they have more or less changed every aspect of Selenium. It is like they have rewritten their entire Selenium code base. Okay, just to change this protocol, or these are some standards, okay, which are global standards. To move from one standard to another standard, the Selenium people have more or less rewritten their entire code base. So Selenium 4 is like a new tool altogether, a new Selenium we can call. Already I've shown you the Selenium official website. So why I have brought this framework thing at this place is, what would be the end product of this course? Okay. So if you take a look at this course content, we are learning so many things here. We are learning Java, we are learning Selenium, we are learning Maven, TestNG, all these things. So after learning all these things, what we are going to do? We are going to do web automation. But there should be some end product of this course as well, using which you can do web automation. That end product is what we call as framework. Okay. So that's why I have put some information about the framework here. But again, like this Selenium architecture, to understand what this framework is, how to build it and all, we have to basically, do some journey into this course. Okay. But in general, this would be the end product of this course. So at the end of this course, I should say, so I know to build a framework using Selenium and supporting tools. and the programming language would be Java. Okay. So basically, frameworks helps us in these things. It helps us in organizing our test scripts. It eases the maintenance task. It facilitates integration with other testing tools. So what framework is? We can simply call it as it is a set of rules or guidelines that we only decide whenever we start building it. Okay. Or we can also say it is a folder structure of our project in which we will write all our Selenium code. Okay. I will write all my Java code, inside some, some folder structure, right? There should be some hierarchy. I cannot just write all the code in one file. I would be creating multiple files. I would be, putting these files in different folders, all those things. So that folder structure will basically be our framework. How I want to organize my different files. That is what a framework would be. So our end product or end goal would be to develop a framework using which I can carry out my automation, and the advantages would be these 3 points. Okay. So this is a brief introduction about what this course is going to be, what automation is all about, what Selenium is all about. Okay. So from tomorrow onwards, we would start learning this Selenium. Okay. So before we get started with, Java learning, that is how our course is structured, right? So we have covered this part today, and the next component should be our Java. But before that, I want to show you this IDE component. What is this? And for this, we don't require Java knowledge. Okay, we can simply start using this Selenium IDE. So this is what I will be taking up tomorrow. So I will show you how to record a script using this IDE and what are its advantages and what are its disadvantages. Okay, so there is certain limitations to this IDE. So all these things we will see tomorrow, and from day after tomorrow we will actually get started with the Java thing. Okay, any doubts, any queries so far? Able to follow?
We will go in depth regarding frameworks and all that.
Mhm.
This was just a overview. That's what I'm asking
Okay,
about
regarding,
framework.
okay, okay. See, we cannot simply start using the tool as it is. Okay. If it comes with any UI, let's say this Teams, okay, this is also a tool, but we have a set UI for this. We know where to start a chat, we know where to record a meeting, we know where to download a file, right? All those things are predefined. But when it comes to Selenium, it doesn't come with a UI like that. We have to basically, organize ourselves here. We have to tell ourselves, okay, where will I keep the click command? Where will I keep the type command? Where will I basically keep my runner file? All these different components of any automation, we have to organize them. Okay, that organization is what is called as framework. And if you look at this course, there are some other supporting tools as well, right? So we have to integrate these tools with Selenium plus Java. This integration will be seamless if we do it in a certain way. Okay. It is not like, I will just start using Selenium and Maven like that. It would not work in that way. So there has to be a certain procedure, certain format in which we use all these components. Okay. That that structure or that way of using this is what we call as a framework. So now the question comes, who is going to give us this framework? There is nobody who is going to give us this one. There is no global standard that we can start following it. Okay. This framework is something which we will only build, we will only define as per our usage scenario. I will take into consideration how my application is, what are the different supporting tools I will be using, and how I want to structure my code so that these things are, achieved. Maintenance becomes easy. I can add more and more scripts to my framework. And in future, if I want to integrate this with any other tool, that integration should be smooth. Okay? This is the whole concept of framework. So, so since this is not provided by someone, we have to build it. Okay. If it was provided by someone, then it is easy. We can just learn it, what it is, and we can also learn it how to use it. But this framework is not going to be so. This is something we have to construct, we have to design, and we have to develop. Okay. So, I mean, there are certain standards which we can follow in doing this also. So we would be learning all those things. I mean, this page object model, this test ng, all these components will help us in building a framework. Okay. So that is the overall insight into this framework. So this has to be the end product. When you learn this, I mean, complete this course and go to an interview, the questioning will start from this framework, not from Selenium, not from Java. Okay. That is how important this framework is. Or whatever the questions you will get in interview, they will be in one or the other way connected to this framework. Okay. So this will be the case with any open source tool. If you are using a tool like Catalan Studio, which comes with its own UI, there the framework is already set. There everything is already predefined. You have to use it in that way only. In Selenium, it is not the case. You have to define it, how you want to use this tool. Okay, that is going to be framework. You able to follow?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other queries? Any other doubts? All right. So as I said, we can stop for today, and tomorrow we will take a look at this IDE. This will be like an insight into Selenium even before we learn what is Selenium. Okay. No coding is required for this. Just testing knowledge is sufficient to start using this IDE. Okay. So we will learn this IDE tomorrow, and from the third day onwards we will get into Java. Okay. All right, so let us stop for today. And tomorrow again, we'll have the session at 7 a.m. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.